It's a lot of our face.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us in the world. I'm Tina-Desiree Berg. We are doing the Status Coup live stream today, and there is a lot to talk about. We're going to open the show as people are streaming in with a clip of Biden signing the new bill, the Inflation Reduction Act.
Are you guys stoked? It's so great. It's historic. It's historic. It's historic. Well, let's play the clip first. I'm Ron Placone, by the way. Good to see everybody.
We celebrate a groundbreaking achievement, the most important bill we have passed in a long time. President Biden will sign the Inflation Reduction Act into law today. This bill will endure as one of the greatest legislative feats in decades. I also want to thank Speaker Pelosi, all the chairs of the committee, Joe Manchin for working so hard to get this bill done.
And I'm about to sign the Inflation Reduction Act into law, one of the most significant laws in our history. Let me say from the start, with this law, the American people won and the special interests lost. The American people won and the special interests lost. We're in a session of, for a while, people doubted whether any of that was going to happen. I know there are those here today who hold a dark and despairing view of this country. I'm not one of them. I believe in the promise of America. I believe in the future of this country. I believe in the very soul of this nation. And most of all, I believe in you, the American people. I believe to my core, there isn't a single thing this country cannot do when we put our mind to it. We just have to remember who we are. We are the United States of America. Okay. There you go.
It's now law.
I don't know, Ron. He keeps saying that special interests lost out in this bill, and I just don't think that that's entirely true, right? So we still have federal drilling. We still have oil and gas lease auctions happening. Fossil fuels have their say in this bill. I think that there are some good stuff.
They did more than their say. They had like carte blanche. It was so funny when he was, which by the way, I love how chef's kiss. They go out of their way to praise Joe Manchin. Thanks for that big fuck you to the country. Much appreciated. And when Joe, I don't know, I was backstage, but when he said there are some people who have a dark and disparaging view of this country, I raised my hand. I was like, he's talking to me. I feel seen.
Well, but that's just it, right? So Manchin, in order to come aboard, brought his fossil fuel backers with him. I think that's just a fact of the matter. It would be one thing if the Democratic Party were coming out and saying basically that, listen, we fought for what we could. We unfortunately couldn't do better. This is a step in the right direction. But to sell this bill as it is a historic leap in climate change reduction, to sell it as if, special interests didn't have their say is just a fantastical oversell. And it's falling flat on, the voters' ears, I think.
Here's the hard part, though, Tina. It's an oversell, all right, but it's technically not a lie because they're saying it's a historic investment in climate. Technically, that is true because in comparison, they're zero.
Zero.
Compared to zero, yeah, it's historic. Because other than that, zero. It's more than zero. That's historic. I just finished post-production on my first pilot that has not been released to the public yet. I did do a pre-release for my patrons so they could check it out, tell me what they think. So I tweeted, I just said, I just had my most viewed pilot ever. Because it's the only one I've ever done. It's the only one I've ever done. And by the way, when I tweeted that, it had 2 views. Both were from me.
Both also historic.
But it was historic. Like, most viewed pilot ever. This is my only one. It's not even released yet, but never had another. So, most historic climate investment ever compared to zero. Compared to zero,
yeah.
I know you touched on this, so I do think we need to be all-encompassing here. Yes, there are some good parts in this bill. There are some good investments that happen in this bill. They're taking care of people with black lung. How could you not be for that? Of course, everybody's going to be for that. That's a good thing. But there's a lot of poison pills in this bill, too. The biggest ones are they continue the fossil fuel industry. And not just continue it like, we'll drill if we need to. 620 million acres. By the way, Joe Biden promised zero. 620 million acres. This is more of a drilling bill than a climate bill, but that's what you get when Wall Street runs your government.
Right. And yet here they are overselling it. So I think that this could backfire. I don't think a lot of voters are intended.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of fire, Tina. There's gonna be oceans on fire. There's gonna be like water on fire from faucets. There's gonna be tons of fire. Agree.
Yeah, we're in trouble here. So my personal feeling is this would have been historic if we had done this back in 1996. It should have been done back in 1996. But now in 2022, climate change is here. We're not talking about something that's going to happen 20 years into the future as we were back then in 1996. It's happening now. And in many ways, we've passed a point of no return, meaning if we turned off the carbon dioxide spout today, we would still be experiencing climate change well into the future. And I would also like to add to that, it's not just carbon dioxide. There's other gases involved here. Methane's another one. I think, we have yet to have the conversation about methane gases. Factory farming is contributing a lot of methane gas to the atmosphere as well. So it's not just one isolated thing. We are in a very dire situation as far as climate change is concerned. And I just don't think this bill is good enough to do anything about it. And we're supposed to just be saying, thank you, sir, for that little bit, but we're all going to die in 30 years anyway, kind of an attitude.
Well, here's the thing. Wow, is that your ride? Did you order a private jet? What are you waiting for?
That's my pizza delivery.
Is that your man? We're talking about climate change, and you're ordering private jets all willy-nilly. Where are you going? Are you trying to get to WeHo? Where are you going? Where are you going at this hour that you needed your jet? Well, here's the other thing. This bill has zero for public infrastructure. Right. Zero. I mean, we refuse. Now, look, I'm glad that they're going to try to make the batteries more efficient for electric vehicles. Of course, that's a good thing. That's great. But at the end of the day, we need to completely get away from the car culture. Yeah. We need to have a future where like you basically don't really even use a car. When you do, yes, it is full electric, but you don't really use it except for like maybe groceries or something like that. That's what we need to aspire to. And then we need to have sustainable transportation solutions that don't rely on fossil fuels, which we can do. Like, it's not like, I mean, people make it out like, oh, we can't possibly ever get to this. Well, yeah, we can. Like we're just not invested into it yet.
We're not invested into it. And I talked about this a couple weeks ago. We had a very serious ozone layer crisis, about 20 years ago, where there was an actual hole in the ozone layer. It was very deadly. And everybody from every country in the world got together. We figured out the problem. We dealt with the problem, and now the ozone has now healed itself. There just doesn't seem to be that same will that exists in the current climate. Nobody seems to be like, everybody knows it's happening, but they're very laissez-faire about it.
Well, because the ask is more significant this time.
It's a huge ask, but what other choice do we have?
What's the alternative? You know what I think people miss too, as far as like if we're just going to focus on the messaging for a minute. They ignore the fact that it's like, yes, this is a huge ask, but this is also a huge opportunity. Is our status quo so great that you would hate to get rid of it? I don't think it is.
That's why we're status coup.
Right. So it's like, look, we could totally have a much better society than what we have now. And some of these people who make it out like we're going to have to all live like we're Amish, by candlelight and shit. First of all, there's no evidence supporting that. There's like 11 viable alternatives out there that, yes, they still need work done to get to the point that we need them to be at. Right. But you're say like all 11 of them are going to fail and you have no basis to make that leap. We've had this throughout human history tons of times. I mean, back in the day, there were people who didn't think the wheel was ever going to work. Guess what? Yeah. The wheel freaking worked. All right. There were people who said we'd never fly. Guess what? We've flown many times over. There were people who said there'd never be a horseless buggy. Guess what? We've had horseless buggies for a long time now. Now there's people saying we've peaked with fossil fuels. We haven't. They've already test flown like planes that run on like water and shit, I'm pretty sure. So it's like, it's just a matter of time. At the end of the day, what you have, I mean, you're getting fluff bills like this, which, I gave it a 2 out of 10. I think that was a little too generous. But like, you know, at the end of the day, you have all these Wall Street financial firms, and they're the people who really run this country. We all know this. They don't want to give up their short-term gains. And what are their short-term gains mostly in? Fossil fuels. They're not investing in new stuff because even they know, well, we can't completely destroy the freaking planet. We need to live here. Those of us who can't get on Elon or Jeff's ship. So they don't want to completely destroy things, but they're all not willing to let go of their short-term gains. So what needs to happen? You need to take away their incentive. That's why the thing that's very frustrating about climate change is this need for a bit of a top-bottom solution. Like you need to have policy that says your short-term gains are gone. This is the end date. This is the deadline. It's over after that. You put that deadline in place, they're going to be scrambling to find sustainable solutions. And then, of course, they're going to profit off of it and be assholes like they always are. But at least we're going to have a sustainable way to have a freaking planet. I could deal with that, So that, at the end of the day, that's all it is. In this bill, yeah, there's a few good things. There's a lot of bad things. And there's just going to be stuff we're going to have to fight in the future. Because now we have 620 million acres of vulnerable land.
It's insane. I guess the other thing that's on my mind lately, though, is also the methane gas, because it's not sustainable, right? Because of we have how many billions of people on the planet now? 7 billion. We cannot continue doing the farming, per acre that we're doing now. We can't sustain it if we're going to feed the world. So I don't even know when we're going to have that conversation. That's, another layer to the onion. We have so many problems facing the planet right now, and we're just not dealing with them. And it's a frightful moment that we're in. And here we are. Anyway, I want to move on to the next topic. We have so much going on today, Ron. It's a very heavy, as you know, news cycle. Lots of stuff going on in the world, good, bad, and ugly. I did want to talk a little bit about on the latest Trump raid situation, what's going on there. A judge has scheduled a hearing on potentially unsealing the FBI search records for this Thursday, so in 2 days. The DOJ doesn't want to do this, obviously, but Trump says that he does want it unsealed. That's what he's saying. And I think, obviously, the media wants it unsealed. We want to see what's in there. And I think the general public does, too. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, let us see it. I mean, look, you and I have had some conversations on mic and off, and I am among the more skeptical towards this whole thing, just like I was skeptical towards Russiagate, as you were, just like I was skeptical towards the impeachment performance piece, as you were. Here, I'm a little skeptical, too, that this is going to lead to much of anything. I'm
a little less skeptical than you are, but I do hear you on that.
Yeah, I mean, no, I know you are. I mean, but I still remain skeptical because, and I know that this is a little bit different than those two, charades. I know that this is a little bit different because now there's a clear crime in scope. But even in this, for instance, you look at how it started. Okay, did this guy incite violence? All right, that's for a court of law to decide. That's the way, free speech law works. Well, now it's diverted to okay, he might have taken these documents. That's all fine and good. Like let's see what's in them. But, it seems like we're already sort of moving the goalposts now. And we've heard this record before. So I'm kind of skeptical. I have a feeling at most there might be some kind of fine or something, and that's about it. So, I could be wrong. Maybe there's something. I mean, but
I think, Ron, there's two issues here. There's the issue of what did Trump do? How bad is what Trump did? Is he guilty of something here? And the second issue is whether or not he will serve any time or have any punishment for that. I think they're two separate issues. I think the first one is clearly a yes. So, his responses to this is, well, Garland should have been used less intrusive means, done something else. Well, he did. I mean, you were served with a subpoena. You just didn't respond to the subpoena. That's on you. Then it was he declassified the documents. Then it was the FBI planted classified documents. So there's been all of these kind of sort of contradictory viewpoints on what's going on here. I think one way or the other, the Espionage Act is something we should talk about. Obviously, this is a 1917 bill. It's been used to prosecute whistleblowers, and I have a huge problem with that. Obviously, this bill needs to either be abolished, rewritten, or something. But, trying to put Trump into that same circle, I also find to be very problematic. Trump is not a whistleblower. He is somebody that serves in the highest office and has been given a lot of power, and he should be held, in my opinion, accountable for that. I don't think it's the same thing as Snowden or Manning.
That's putting it gently. Of course, it's not the same thing.
You see people trying to put them into the same basket, right? Saying that, let's add Trump to that list. I'm like, no, let's not add Trump to that list. This is not the same thing. But Ron, you have nuance.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, and look, people sometimes, especially in the United States. I mean, I think it goes on everywhere in the world, but especially we're a particular brand of annoying here. But like, people pretend as if the world is a dodgeball game and you're always just picking teams. It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way.
Simultaneously realize the FBI is not your friend and they are corrupt to the gill. And Donald Trump is also not your friend and corrupt to the gill. You don't need to root for either entity here.
No, you don't.
Realize that the Espionage Act is an insanely troubling piece of legislation. It was written in the context of a world war, when we were worried about spies in a world war. And then it got revamped again in another world war because we were worried about Nazi spies. So when you apply it to today's society, what are you going to use something like that for?
They're using it against whistleblowers.
Whistleblowers because it's all about the military interest of the United States.
Right.
What does that mean now? That means straight up carnage and imperialism and wars for oil. So who are they going to use that against? Whistleblowers and the people who publish them. Right. Whether it's Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, Daniel Hale, the list goes on and on. So now
Obama prosecuted more of these folks than anybody did. So it's both parties that.
I already tortured some folks.
Ron, you're on fire today. Anyway, I do think we need to deal with the Espionage Act. I think whistleblowers should never, or journalists should ever be prosecuted under this act. It needs the fact that that's happened is something we should all have deep concern about. And Assange is obviously at the top of that list. His team is now suing Mike Pompeo. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah,
I support that. I think he's doing the right thing. Pompeo was a terrible Secretary of State. This is a guy who is very much a neoconservative, obviously believes in propping up the military state abroad, ex-CIA, the whole nine yards. So it'll be interesting to see where that lawsuit goes, but I'm completely getting off base.
Yeah, we're getting into the weeds a little bit here. I mean, I will say, like, it's what I do. No, I get it. And just one thing I'll add to that real quick, and then we can totally get off it, is, there's still people out there who will, make it out like, oh yeah, Trump and Assange, like they were buddies and this and that. People, it's like, Yahoo was planning to assassinate the guy. Trump was planning to assassinate him. Yahoo News uncovered that. And there's still people who just put these, I mean, you can knock them over with a feather narratives. And now we're just seeing the latest incarnation on that, where we're having to explain to people, no, the FBI is not your friend. No, the Espionage Act is not your friend. No, that doesn't mean that no, Trump is still terrible. He's not your friend either. You don't understand. There's no good guys here. The world doesn't work that way all the time.
And you know what? All of these things change given what administration's over us. You know what I'm saying? So the Hoover FBI is very different from the Bush FBI, is very different from the Biden FBI, right? The Department of Justice, it morphs under each administration. So we've seen different incarnations of that. I do find it interesting that we currently have an FBI that is, for the first time I could ever see, at least in my lifetime, going after right-wing extremists more so than left-wing ones. And that's the way it should have always been. Right-wing extremists commit the most acts of domestic terrorism. That's always been the case.
Would you go as far as to say more, though?
Yeah, because they never did it at all whatsoever before, barely. Timothy McVeigh making a bomb. I mean, it would have to be something of that magnitude.
So more compared to. Well, then let me clarify then, because I might have misunderstood. I thought you were saying that they're going after right-wing extremists more than they go after the left.
No, more than they've gone after right-wing.
More than they've gone after. Okay, but that's probably true. Yeah, I mean that's probably true. I mean, that's maybe that's because we've seen such a big rise in it, though.
But right. I mean, but my point is, it has to take that level of like, in order for that to be the case, which is kind of wild. Also,
one of these days I'll share your optimism in something. I don't know when, but
I'm just naturally.
I feel like it's going to come.
Optimistic. It's going to come.
It's going to happen. There's going to be the day.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't. I mean, because it's like people throw out these cliches. Like, it's just like, well, this proves that nobody's above the law. It's like, I hate to break it to you.
I don't think
there's
that's
plenty.
true.
I know you don't, but it's just like there's plenty of people above the law, unfortunately. And it sucks. That freaking sucks. And most of them are wealthy. You know, that's why it's like, even with the whole like, oh, like the FBI planted something. The FBI plants stuff all the freaking time. That happens. But do they do it to people as powerful as Trump? That I highly freaking doubt. They don't do that to rich and powerful people. They do that to powerless people.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed. All right, Colin, let's put up the Washington Post article. I wanted to talk about this next. Trump allied lawyers pursued voting machine data in multiple states, records reveal. So let's pull that up. There we go. I want to talk about this because they got their hands on some documents this week, and I think it's very interesting stuff. A team of computer experts directed by lawyers allied with President Donald Trump copied sensitive data from election systems in Georgia as part of a secretive multi-state effort to access voting equipment that was broader, more organized, and more successful than previously reported, according to emails and other records obtained by the Washington Post. As they worked to overturn Trump's 2020 election defeat, the lawyers asked a forensic data firm to access county election systems in at least 3 battleground states, according to the documents and interviews. The firm charged an upfront retainer fee for each job, which in one case was $26,000. Attorney Sidney Powell sent the team to Michigan to copy a rural county's election data and later helped arrange for it to do the same in the Detroit area, according to the records. A Trump campaign attorney engaged the team to travel to Nevada, and the day after the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol, the team was in southern Georgia copying data from a Dominion voting system in rural county, Coffee County. So interesting stuff here. So they were sending teams out to actually copy the voting machine data. What do you make of that, Ron? It's Antifa?
Yeah, I think it's probably Antifa going through it. No, I mean, it's like, I don't know what they're expecting to find at this point.
Well, I don't know they're expecting to find anything. I think they know that they lost. Yeah, I think they know they lost the election. I think the bigger concern here is why are they copying data? Were they going to do something more nefarious?
Sure. I mean, I don't know at this point, what could they try to do even?
Well, let's continue on. The documents provide the first confirmation that data from Georgia's election system was copied. Indications of a breach there were first raised by plaintiffs in the case in February, and state officials have said that they are investigating. The breach is way beyond what we thought, said David D. Cross, a lawyer for the plaintiffs, who include voting security activists and Georgia voters. The scope of this is mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. The drumbeat of revelations about alleged security breaches in local election offices has grown louder during the nearly 2 years since the 2020 election. There was a growing concern among experts that officials sympathetic to Trump's claims of vote rigging could undermine election security in the name of protecting it. Okay, so that's really right there. That's the lead. They should have led with that, in my opinion. You know, we now have a situation where we have Trump supporters, like full-blown right-wing MAGA guys, winning elections, like as Secretary of State, as we've seen in Arizona. So the idea that they're able to access the voting data, what could they be doing this? Like, they're almost engaging in the thing that they're accusing others of, right? They're saying that, you know what I'm saying? So I think this is something that's very problematic and we need to keep our eye on. I think, if anything, these guys are more capable in engage in election fraud than anybody else is, right?
Yeah, I mean, probably. As far as like data from 2020, I don't know what they could possibly really do with that, you know, but like. Well,
I imagine they were doing this at that time though. So we're just seeing this
like a couple years. Right. Okay. So that makes sense.
precursor to what could be coming in 2024. They were willing and able to do that in 2020. We need to pay attention to that, is what I'm saying.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, we need to pay attention to just election integrity in general, because it's like we have incredibly susceptible and vulnerable systems. We have incredibly susceptible and vulnerable mechanisms in place. I mean, I remember there was that review of the systems we had in the state of California, and it was like completely vulnerable in every way, shape, and form. They did nothing. They were just like, shucks, we don't care. The 5th largest GDP in the world. They don't give a hoot about any type of election security. And there's so many things that we could do that we just don't bother even looking into, and instead just kind of go with these archaic systems that we have. And it's problematic.
It is problematic. I do support, keeping track of the paper trails that we've returned to. Thank goodness, Pennsylvania has done the same thing. So, I mean, I won't say that there's a entire 100% lack of concern about this. I do think we could do more. I think, some of the things that people talked about also could lead to broader problems. I know some folks were talking about having internet voting. I think that would be a disaster. That's even more open to hacking or whatever.
It works for American Idol.
It works.
I mean, I think we should just vote.
I mean, we're at the point where we're electing reality stars to presidency, so maybe you have a point here.
Well, I actually think it would make things easier. I actually kind of do have a different take on that. I think we should all vote during American Idol, but I think we should just eliminate the Senate, eliminate the House of Representatives, and just have a people's legislature. But you make sure everyone participates, so you do it just during American Idol. So they just have a thing where they're just like, who was your favorite singer? You vote on that. And then they go, should we legalize cannabis federally? And then you get to vote on that. Half the people might be high anyway, so they're going to be a for sure yes. I just think it would be a better tomorrow. So no, I would like to think that at some point we would be able to have an acceptable level of security online. I don't think we're there yet. I mean, there might be more tech-savvy people that might be able to dispute that, and I'm not saying that I know everything on all the ins and outs on what could be possible, but it doesn't seem like we're there yet.
We're definitely not. The only thing that, in my opinion, is truly safe is paper balloting, or the most safe. Even that could be susceptible, But I don't mind using the electronic dating or voting system as long as they do keep the paper trails, because we can always go back and count the paper ballots if need be, if there's a problem, right? It's the systems where they're not doing that I think are the most precarious at this point. So, I mean, again, this is an ongoing conversation that has been going on with election integrity. I just wanted to bring this to attention to folks as far as what the extent of what was going on with the Trump administration. We now know via these emails, because if they're willing to do that last election cycle, you better believe that they're willing to do it the next one. And they have now been, winning elections as in places where they would have access to these things more readily. So these are QAnon, they're QAnon folks. So, they're capable of, as much as they want to bitch about, stop the steal. I mean, we can look at that. The stop the steal rallies were initially called stop the count. They only changed it from stop the count to stop the steal because people gave them pushback, because they were like, what, you want to stop democracy? You want to stop ballot counting? So we don't do that anymore. You want to install your fascist? Well, the answer to that is obviously yes.
Well, it's interesting that Georgia was one of the states on the docket here, because they passed that ridiculous voter suppression bill. Now, it was a very problematic bill. And again, in typical American fashion, people harped on all these kind of small ancillary things that weren't really a part of it. Like they harped on the you can't give water to people, which wasn't actually part of it. It was like you couldn't give gifts to people or something like that. It wasn't an important thing to focus on.
I have no problem with people standing in a voting line getting water. I think that's bizarre. But you're right.
I have no problem with that either, but that wasn't really part of the bill, is my point. People
people on Twitter were definitely making that. They were saying that for sure.
Right. And so people were just hyper-focused on these things that sort of kind of devalued a constructive conversation on what was really going on in that bill. And what was really going on in that bill was that they basically set up a system for just a one-party dictatorship, which in a red state like Georgia is going to be the GOP all the time. So when you read like what that bill really did, how it allows them to have all these says and how elections are run and how districts are drawn out, I mean, it's basically just letting them completely take over with no facade even. So
Right.
it's a ridiculously problematic bill that was just straight up cartoonish in nature. And people kind of ignored it because they were like, these people are complaining, but there's nothing about water in this. It must be fine. No, it's not fine. You have to read the thing.
Yeah. Nobody reads bills, not even senators, let's be honest.
No.
Not defending that position. I'm just saying that's the case. All right, moving on. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the FBI protests that we've seen this week in front of various FBI offices across the country. We had some here in California. The one I want to bring your attention to is the one that happened in Phoenix, Arizona. So can we pull that up, Colin, the video?
FBI set up the January 6th Patriots. FBI is behind all of this. Coming after Trump because he's going after pedophiles. FBI cannot be trusted. CIA can't be trusted. All three-letter agencies are absolute scum. We're going to get rid of every one of them. Their days are numbered. FBI, CIA, if you're a three-letter organization, your days are numbered. Start looking for another job.
Their three-letter agencies are crooked.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Well, the biggest case this year in the Supreme Court was West Virginia versus the EPA. That will usher in the dismantling of all the federal bureaucracy, all of the fourth estate, because they've ruled that the EPA is not valid under our constitutional republic. The legislature cannot defer to three-letter agencies that just spring up out of nowhere. They have to be written in somewhere. The legislature doesn't do them. The executive branch cannot just defer all of that bureaucracy and power to an unelected representative. And that's what those three-letter agencies are.
This guy wins. Trump 2024, just so you know, he's going to come back. Comeback of 2024. The FBI is organized crime. They're corrupt. They're compromised. Trump 2024. We're going to make America great again. But most of all, we're going to make America godly again.
Okay, where do I begin with that one?
Boring meetup group ever. Yeah, only like five. I mean, that one guy. How long did he hold down the fort solo? I mean, that's gotta be just sad. Just waving that flag like, there were 4 babies on the Facebook event. I'm not. My arms are tired. Where is everybody? There were 5. George said he was gonna be here. What the fuck, George? I texted you.
George is that George is the guy with the machine gun. So number one, the fourth estate does he not understand the fourth estate's the media? That's journalism, not the EPA. Like there was so many weird things in that word salad.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was like, he lumps the EPA with the CIA and the FBI, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
3 letters. No, that's their big buzz thing now. And this is my first time hearing of this, but apparently the big buzz thing now is the 3-letter agencies are bad. Now here's because I mean I always give a chef's kiss to the irony. They were calling out 3-letter agencies, grouping them all together. Well, unironically, flying the flag of, you guessed it, a 3-letter agency, basically. That's Hilarious. CSA, Confederate States of America. So, gotta love it. Gotta love it.
So, it's interesting to me because, this week we've seen, obviously, a huge outpouring now from the right against the FBI. What's motivating this is really crystal clear. They don't like the fact that Donald Trump might be held accountable for anything that he did, right? So this is being very much motivated by politics with these folks. So I want to caution people on the left saying like, hey, they finally get it, because no, they don't finally get anything. They're not interested in this left-wing version of reforming police. They're not interested in looking at systemic racism. They're not interested in replacing police officers going to mental health services with something that makes more sense. Like all of those arguments and policy wants that the left has as far as defunding police enforcement in the country are not what the right wants. The right wants to replace the FBI with Pinochet's army. They want to have a fascist army that's going to come there and push the communists out of the helicopters. Don't kid yourself. So these things are not the same. So it's wild to me to see that there's some folks that don't see that crystal clear. What are your thoughts on that, Ron?
I mean, people always love to kind of be contrarian, right? And they always kind of love to, so it's contrarian and edgy to, when Marjorie Taylor Greene tweets about the FBI to light up to give her a cookie, and it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. Like you unpacked it, and I do think it's kind of funny that you were like, we're seeing this big uprising on the right, which we are, but you said that right after we watched the video with 5 people. There's 5 more wherever the fuck that was where we were. There's more of them. We got 5 for you.
I wanted to show this one, though, because they had machine guns.
Dave's not good at promoting. Dave exclusively promoted this event on... Dave promoted this event in the Yellow Pages. Did you know you can still buy an ad in the Yellow Pages? No. Dave, the white supremacist, knew that. He did. No one else saw it. And I don't know if that guy's name was Dave. Who knows?
I can't wait till we start. I can't wait till we get to the Sarah Palin conversation. You're on a roll today. All right, let's move on to boost over DeSantis, because of course this has happened. So, part and parcel to this conversation, a lot of people, I think, thought that the Trump cult would disappear once Trump was out of office, that right-wing extremists would, kind of tamp down once Trump was out of office. That's not the case at all. In fact, I think in many ways it's increased, minus the 5 people in Phoenix you're talking about there. And part and parcel to that is I think Trump is kind of an iconoclast, right? He has this sort of cult of personality that people have glommed onto and they're still stuck with, right? DeSantis does not have this. DeSantis might be a more palatable candidate to your average Republican voter, like that's maybe a Republican voter because of business interests, corporate interests, or they believe in small government and whatnot. But he just is sort of a boring guy. And I don't think he has the ability to, wind up the masses the way that Trump is still able to do that. So, and now with what's happening with the FBI, I think that that's even more true because they are now seeing Trump as a martyr to the cause. So if anything, it's made him more popular with that group. So having said that, Colin, I wanted to pull up the Mar-a-Lago raid gave Trump a 10-point boost over DeSantis with Republican primary voter poll shows. Okay, great. So here we go, guys. That's exactly what's happened. The Mar-a-Lago raid gave former President Donald Trump a 10-point boost over possible 2024 rival Governor Ron DeSantis among Republican primary voters, further widening his already significant lead, according to a new poll. The political morning consult poll was conducted on August 10th after federal agents searched the Florida property on Monday, but before Friday's unsealing of the search warrant and property receipt revealed that the FBI seized 11 sets of classified documents. I don't think that will make a difference in how some of these folks feel. I think, they have a tendency to ignore the things that doesn't make their guy sound fantastic, right? So they very much cherry pick parts of Trump. The poll found that 57% of registered voters would back Trump if he chose to run and if the Republican presidential primary were held that day. That's a 4-point increase on the 53% who said they would vote for the former president last month, per the Political Morning Consul's July 15th through 17th national tracking poll. All right. that's where we're at. So, Ron, where are you? Where are you in all this? Do you think Trump's going to win? Do you think he's going to win?
I actually think I have a slightly different take on
Okay, let's hear it.
than you do. As weird as this sounds, I almost see something like this as a good. And the reason I say that is because I think Ron DeSantis, I'll go this far. I think he is the most dangerous person in government.
Do you think he's more dangerous than Trump?
By far.
Okay.
By far. I think that Donald Trump, and this is what Donald Trump has always been, he's just a freaking wannabe playboy goofball. He has no, I mean, yeah, he has right-wing ideology because that's what he's surrounded by. He has no strong convictions on anything other than his own freaking ego, and he's a doofus. Ron DeSantis is a fascist theocrat by the very definition of the word. I mean, again, Trump is too, but he's just the puppet there. Ron DeSantis, he knows how to get that done. And when you're saying things like, oh, Ron DeSantis is boring, you're not wrong. He is boring. But he knows how to get stuff done because
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you on that. I think he's more
you're
intelligent.
right. He would be passively accepted by general Republican voters. But look at the kind of stuff he does. Look at the Florida bill that he just got through. Again, a bill that a lot of people didn't take the time to read, and a lot of people were deceived by. People who took the time to read it, you read it, I read it, Jordan read it. We saw what that bill really does, which it makes life hell for LGBTQ youth, harder than they already have it. We saw what that bill really does because we read it, and we read it in the context of what this bill would do if enacted.
Right.
Imagine that type of policy on a federal level.
No, he's frightful. Don't get me wrong, he's frightful.
I mean, so yes, I would say, and again, I mean, I despise Trump as much as everybody else, believe me. But even though I just sounded like him there, believe me, I don't like him anymore. But yeah, I would say DeSantis is a million times more dangerous. A million times more dangerous. And anything, I mean, it's not like the GOP is going to have anyone palatable. So, I mean, anybody.
Not at this point. You know, and you're right about the Christian fascist part of the equation. I mean, look at the books that he banned, like 54% of math books because of his personal beliefs about critical race theory, which is just absolute hogwash. So this is true. I don't disagree with any of that. I guess the point I'm making is that I think if Trump runs again, that he is going to win the primary. I think people thought like, well, okay, the FBI is investigating him. They're finally going to see that this guy's a crook. Nah, they're seeing him as a martyr, right? He's a martyr for their cause. So I do think, I do think he has that sort of iconoclastic personality that's able to draw folks in. There's a reason that there's a cult of 45, right? There's a reason that that exists and continues to exist.
And that poor beer didn't do anything wrong. It did nothing wrong. I mean, it used to be like an edgy left of center beer. It was advertised by Lando. Remember those commercials? They were classic.
Yeah.
I forget the actor's name off the top of my head, which is bad. But yeah, Lando. What was that guy's?
Anyway. From Star Wars?
Yeah. Lando advertised.
Was he thinking that?
45.
Oh, shit. Was he? That was what it was. I don't remember. Okay.
Someone in the chat will get it. I'm blanking on the actor's name off the top of my head. But he's great. Anyway, but yeah. So in everything you're saying, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I'm just saying, like, I think DeSantis is a certain brand of danger that could even. I mean, I think he could even potentially pass up Bush should he ever get into power. Should he ever get into power?
No, I agree with you there. Absolutely.
So yeah,
I think we've whitewashed a lot of Bush's war crimes and whatnot since he's been out of office. But
because no one remembers. We're the United States of amnesia, Tina. No one remembers that. That's why everybody loves Liz Cheney now.
Who we're also going to talk about. She's facing her primary, so we're going to talk about her in a second too. But before we go to the Wyoming and Alaska primaries, I do want to talk about Amazon a little bit. Amazon's again in the news at the forefront of great company as long as they have union workers. So they have filed papers now in Albany, New York, to unionize that facility as of this morning. So we're going to be hearing more on that. Chris Smalls, who is the president of the Amazon Union out of Staten Island, was here in Los Angeles this week meeting with various labor organizers, including Strippers on Strike, which we did a piece about a month and a half ago. He came out onto the
baby.
Yeah, that's right. I have some video from that. Let's open, though, with the Chris Smalls addresses labor activists in Echo Park video.
We're all a part of the working class, and we all have a role to play in this revolution, because it is a revolution. Let's talk about, can I curse?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Fuck yeah. Get a little comfortable. So yeah, I'm gonna let you guys know right now, it's a real war going on outside against us, against organized labor. Tech companies are pouring billions of dollars into stopping us. It's already working. They're already winning. Unions in this country are less than 10%. Even with all the news and the Starbucks campaigns and Amazon campaigns and so on, it doesn't matter because they're still outnumbering us. And the crazy thing about the whole situation is we outnumber them. So how do we make this movement grow? One thing for sure, we can't call it a movement unless we all come together. All the movements that we have in this country, from social injustice, environmental, women's rights, gun laws, student debt, rent, homelessness, I can go on and on. Y'all all know the issues. How much more are we going to take? And we got to think about, what are we really voting for in 24? What do we have now? So we have to ask ourselves, what are we going to do when we leave here? We got to do something about it. So withholding our labor is the best thing we can do. Say it again, withholding our labor is the best thing we can do.
Yes.
So, yes, I agree with Chris. I mean, he went on to make the point later on in the night that you have to be either all in or all out. You could just halfway be in there because it wouldn't be good enough to get anything accomplished. You had to be willing to completely be all in on strikes and whatnot. And I think he's probably right about that. And his message was very much well heard and people were receptive to it. So I wanted to share that. I also have a small clip of him on the picket line with the strippers, if you want to play that, Colin. Chris, is this like the best picket line you've ever been on ever?
It's the most unique, creative, most craziest shit I ever seen in my life. I love it. Jordan.
So, they've been striking there for a couple of months, and I guess they basically decided to bring the club outside to the sidewalk. So they were having a pool-famed picket line. And interestingly enough, several of the customers that had normally would have been inside with these girls that were on strike were there on the sidewalk with them, also participating in the slip and slide thing. So it was kind of funny.
Yeah, good for them.
I know, right?
They've been out there for months, and I really applaud them. And when because I covered it on my show early on as well, and when you saw what they were reporting and the way they were being treated, I mean, it was beyond that they were getting screwed out of their tips and stuff, which is fucked up beyond comprehension. That alone definitely warrants a strike. But it was deeper than that. They were not being kept safe at work. They were being harassed by customers, and when they would raise a complaint, the people would, they're spending money, screw you. That's not. I mean, I've not been to many strip clubs in my life. I've been a couple times, but I know that from people I know who have done that kind of stuff. I mean, the way it should be, the way it ought to be, the way it is, even in the movies and stuff, is if somebody's acting out of line, if somebody is not, acting the way they're supposed to, I mean, you shouldn't even need to say anything. A security guard should just see it and get that person the hell out of there.
Yeah, I agree.
And if you need to yell the password or something, say something, there should be a bouncer over there getting that person the hell out of that establishment. That's the way it should be 100% of the time. You act like a jerk because you had too many, or you're just a jerk in general. You're getting tossed out of that place.
No, you're not wrong. And they had, I spoke with a couple of them too. Like one of them, speaking of it, had a story where a drunk customer crossed the line and started touching her breasts, which is totally also against the law in the state of California, by the way, if they serve alcohol. So, yeah, and the bouncer did nothing. So they have very legitimate beefs. I know the folks that own this particular strip club, Star Garden, also own a second location in Long Beach, which I think is contributing to the prolonged strike because they have money coming in from the second location that the workers are not on strike there. So hopefully this sort of ignites something in this movement. It'd be great to see, all of these strip clubs become unionized, because I think this is for the type of work it is, it can be very dangerous for these girls, and they have a right to be in a safe environment. Sex work is work.
Oh, absolutely. And they didn't, I mean, they were even letting like people loiter when they were getting off their stuff, which is like, I mean, first of all, like that's creepy as hell. But like, I mean, it was, I encourage folks who haven't taken a deep dive into that to see what's really going on, because they are beyond justified in this strike, and I hope they end up owning this establishment when all is done, because it's totally messed up.
So if you guys do want to check that out, we did do a Status Coup video on this a couple months ago, Strippers on Strike. And then there's also an additional one on the District 34 YouTube, where I spoke with even one of the attorneys, the labor attorney for the organization. So yeah, I think it's something to pay attention to. And I think every worker should unionize, and that includes sex workers. Why not? All right. Speaking of, let's pull up the Los Angeles Times article on why Amazon warehouse workers walked off the job site in San Bernardino, because this happened Monday as well. It's been a crazy week, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go. Warehouse workers at Monday's largest air freight facility on the West Coast walked off the job Monday, demanding higher pay and relief from hot conditions they say are unsafe. Organizers with a group called Inland Empire Amazon Workers United said in a Facebook post that 160 employees walked out of the San Bernardino International Airport facility, which is a critical part of Amazon's logistics network and one of the company's 3 U.S. air hubs, which means it's responsible for a much greater area than just California. So this is a huge strike if they go on strike. In a statement, Amazon officials disputed the numbers, saying that 74 out of roughly 1,500 employees of the facility walked out. About 900 employees at the San Bernardino Airport have signed a petition calling for base pay to be increased from 17 per hour to 22 per hour, Inland Empire Amazon Workers United said in a statement. Amazon could deliver a higher standard for workers, but they don't, said Sarah Fee, who has worked at the Air Hub since it opened in March 2021. A warehouse is just a warehouse. A company is just a company. The people are what makes it all work. And we are strong and united to fight for what we deserve. Honestly, Ron, 22 an hour in California, that's still really low wages, given the cost of rent and everything else. So the fact that they're only being paid 17 now is ridiculous. Minimum wage is 15 in the city of LA, for example. Average rent in the city of LA is, $2,400 a month for a small place. So just to give people an idea. So this is not a lot of money they're asking for. Listen, 1,500 employees at the facility. This is how it begins, right? When Chris started organizing the New York location, it was him and a handful of others. And they just pounded that pavement outside there at the bus stop day after day after day, talking to their fellow workers, waking them up to what could be versus what was. Yeah. And it sort of snowballed from there. So I think we have the potential here to have a second location that does that. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think so. And yeah, it needs to happen that way. I mean, you look at what I hope they get to is I hope, when you look at Starbucks has that kind of infrastructure where they're really keeping tabs on this, where you can see like the Starbucks, I forget the exact handle, but it just tracks all the Starbucks unions. And it started out where there would just be a shop here and there. And I remember every week I would report on a different shop. I'd be like, now there's a shop here. Now there's a shop here. Now there's a shop here. Now it's like every day, pretty much, there's another shop, which is fantastic and incredibly encouraging. I hope Amazon, and I know they already are, but I hope they can also kind of duplicate that infrastructure and do the same thing as they are having their union effort, because we are seeing some success in this. And people need to also make the broader connection of, this is how you get true systemic change. I mean, it's real easy for people to be like, well, I don't work at Amazon, so how does it? No. This affects you, because Amazon, I mean, almost half of all online commerce, which, by the way, once we finish this conversation, we should dovetail into digital rights for a minute, because there's a couple bills out there that are reining Amazon in. So I can give an update there after this. But you know, Amazon is responsible for so much of online commerce. Jeff Bezos owns a newspaper. I mean, ironically enough, we were reading, stuff out of the Washington Post, which he owns. Jeff Bezos owns Whole Foods, which, he's a jerk, and the CEO's a jerk too, in case anyone didn't realize that. That guy's been a jerk for years. That guy's been a jerk for decades, but every now and again, there's a bunch of people who don't know that. So he says another douchebag thing, and everyone's like, did you know he was a dick? Yes, we all knew he was a dick for a long time.
Healthcare for his employees for years.
He's a douchebag. What do you know about the owner? We could really fill you in about that guy too. That guy's even freaking worse. But anyway, so when something like Amazon, when the wheels don't turn there, that's huge as far as things are going to have to change in this country. Because Jeff Bezos, I mean, he's one of the emperors when you really break it down. He really is. And he's flying around in his little space rocket. And, if you really hit someone like that in their pocketbook to where they're noticing like their daily profits aren't where they want to be.
Right.
Well, that's when they're going to kind of call the people, who are in charge of the policies. And they're going to say, something's wrong. Something's wrong. You need to do something. And that's when we might get something like a New Deal again. Although this time, it can't be a Band-Aid on capitalism. This time, it has to be a complete diversion from capitalism entirely into a system that is focused on meeting human needs and being stewards to the earth. There's a name for that. It's called eco-frickin-socialism. So that's what we need to go to, eco-socialism. That needs to be the New Deal, the Green New Deal, a real Green New Deal, not the co-opted Green New Deal, the real Green New Deal. And that's the direction we need to go in. And if the Jeff Bezos of the world, aren't going to go along with that, well, tough. They're going to lose everything then. They're going to lose their empire. So, I mean, it's incredibly important when you see these types of strikes.
I agree. So I'm happy to see that there has now been a reawakening, I should say, in the labor movement in the country, because it's been just slapped back for decades now. There used to be a time when, a big portion of the country were part of workers' unions, and then it just got demolished down to like 10%. So the fact that that's growing again is a good thing, because you can see how the decline of labor unions has led to lower pay across the board, even for non-union members. It's true that if you have a union in an industry, it absolutely raises the wages of everybody. So it's important that
we need to, what we're also doing, which is very encouraging, is we're reclaiming what it means to be a union. Like the workers, because it's like they are new unions. They are a union for a new page. There's still
tougher unions, because we've also seen a weakening of labor management in the unions that do exist. Too many times they're willing to kowtow, so to speak.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's been 50 plus years of anti-union propaganda shoved down people's throats. Well, simultaneously, you see the defanging of unions, which turns people off to it. They don't realize what a union's really supposed to be. Now, there's still some good unions out there in the United States that have been around for a long time. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I live in the San Pedro neighborhood. We have the ILWU, which, I don't always agree with every political decision they make, but they are a damn good union. You could ask anyone who's in it. They take care of those loanshoremen.
They're Teamsters, one of the Teamsters unions?
Are they direct with
Teamsters? I don't
know. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but they are, they are basically the longshoremen union. And, I mean, those harbor jobs are really good jobs. Now, even they are crumbling under automation. So it's not like they're without their problems too. But there are still some good unions in the United States. I'm not implying there aren't, but it's like you have to not only have more union membership, but also really reclaim what it means to be a union, and foster the good unions, drive out the bad ones, and replace them with good ones.
Yeah, 100% agree. All right, so let's shift to the next thing. This is a very unbelievably tragic story that I don't understand why this isn't splashed across every front page today.
Well, wait, can we do a quick antitrust update since we're on Amazon?
We're gonna do. Well, you want to do it now? I was gonna do it at the end. It's up to you.
Okay, we'll do it at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's, Colin, let's pull up the child labor story. Yes, you heard that correctly, folks. Child labor story. And you probably did not hear about this today because for some reason, well, the news cycle is so crazy. I guess things are getting buried. And unfortunately, some of the most important news stories of the day are the ones that get buried the most, in my experience. So I did want to bring this to your attention. A subsidiary of Hyundai Motor Corporation has used child labor at a plant that supplies parts for the Korean car maker's assembly line in nearby Montgomery, Alabama. According to area police, the family of 3 underage workers and 8 former current employees of the factory. Underage workers, in some cases as young as 12, have recently worked at a metal stamping plant operated by Smart Alabama LLC, these people said. Smart, listed by Hyundai in corporate filings as a majority-owned unit, supplies parts for some of the most popular cars and SUVs built by the automaker in Montgomery, its flagship U.S. assembly plant. Hyundai didn't respond to phone calls or emails from Reuters seeking comment. I wonder why that is. Smart, in a statement, said it follows federal, state, and local laws and denies any allegation that it knowingly employed anyone who is ineligible for employment. I got to stop there. You're going to tell me you can't look at a 12-year-old and recognize that it's a 12-year-old?
I mean, we've been heading in this direction. I mean, wasn't it the state of Wisconsin that they wanted to like loosen child labor laws?
Yeah.
I mean, we are we're back at like the robber baron days, pretty much.
We absolutely are.
They actually, some would make the argument they actually had more time off than we typically do. It's like we're working. We have all this new technology, yet we're working more hours than people did in like the Middle Ages. It's freaking nuts. It's nuts. Yeah. And we're still not willing to give living wages, but we're bringing back child labor. It's nuts.
That's part of why, because they can afford to pay their illegal immigrant children. Who knows what they were paying them?
Yeah, well, yeah. That's the thing.
That's exactly what's happening here. As if minimum wage isn't low enough and cheap enough, they're going to go to the next level. Apparently, this is just heartbreaking.
Well, and people,
I would imagine the parents of these kids are just desperate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's like, and this is the result of years and years and years and years of just the whole Reaganite, the minimum wage is so kids could have a little extra spending money. So they have no. The minimum wage is a living wage. It's supposed to be a living wage. So if you work 40 hours at a job, whatever that job is, you make enough money to live. That's the point of having a minimum wage. So it's a minimum that you need to live on, and people have to pay you at least that. That's why it exists.
That is how it should be. All right. So Reuters learned of underage workers at the Hyundai-owned supplier following the brief disappearance in February of a Guatemalan migrant child from her family's home in Alabama. The girl, who turns 14 this month, and her 2 brothers, aged 12 and 15, all worked at the plant earlier this year and weren't going to school, according to people familiar with their employment. Their father, Pedro Zai, I think I'm saying that correctly, confirmed these people's accounts in an interview with Reuters. Police in the Zai family's adopted hometown of Enterprise also told Reuters that the girl and her siblings had worked at Smart. The police who helped locate the missing girl at the time of her search identified her by name in a public alert. Reuters is not using her name in this article because she is a minor, and that would be the correct thing to do, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. The police force at Enterprise, about 45 miles from the plant in Laverne, doesn't have jurisdiction to investigate possible labor law violations at the factory. Instead, the force notified the state attorney general's office after the incident, James Sanders, an Enterprise police detective told Reuters. Mike Lewis, a spokesperson at the Alabama attorney general's office, declined to comment. It's unclear whether the office or other investigators have contacted Smart or Hyundai about possible violation. Pedro Zay's children, who have now enrolled for the upcoming school term, were among a larger cohort of underage workers who found jobs at the Hyundai-owned supplier over the past few years, according to interviews with a dozen former and current plant employees and labor recruiters. Several of these minors, they said, have foregone schooling in order to work long shifts at the plant, a sprawling facility with a documented history of health and safety violations, including an amputation hazard. All right, so the picture we're painting here isn't a pretty one, right? So you have obviously a plant that is knowingly, I'm going to say knowingly, participating in child labor. There's no way they can't look at a 12-year-old and realize that they're not old enough to be working there. That's absolutely patently absurd. I don't buy that. You have instances of safety concerns that have happened with workers at the plant. So obviously they're not paying attention to that. And you have them taking advantage of what is mainly desperate migrant families that simply need the income.
Yeah.
How this story isn't it like plastered across every front page this morning is mind-numbing to me, because the fact this is happening in 2020 in the United States of America is just a black blot on our country, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, but unfortunately, you can't see that black blot because it's amidst a long line of other black blots. It's just a huge black blot at this point. I mean, it is completely abysmal, and the very, very sickening part of this is that, as abysmal as it is, it's not surprising. This is the exact. I mean, people were forecasting this. They're like, we're going to see child labor come back before we see living wages. Well, we're here. We made it.
We made it.
And it's like, if we don't, I mean, we've made it so abundantly clear we don't give a shit about children. We've made that so abundantly clear. Well, I mean, unless you're not born yet, then we care. Then we really care. But once you're here, I mean, George Carlin had a bit about that years ago. And, boy, did that really come to fruition. It's always been the case, but now it's turned up to 11. And, I mean, kids aren't even going to school. I mean, it's just freaking. And by the way, when they do go to school, they get to have such great experiences as shooter drills and maybe a live shoot. So, I mean, I do not know any of my friends with kids. I mean, a lot of my friends have kids and they're having kids. I don't know how they sleep at night. And they tell me, Ron, we don't. That's how. We don't. We typically don't. Although, I will say this is sort of like a funny aside. Like you do realize when you don't have kids, and some of your friends do, like how your priorities are just like completely different in life. Like a buddy of mine has his two kids, and they're thinking about a third, I think. They live in Maryland, and he was telling me we both moved recently. I did, and my friend did. And he was telling me, he's like, yeah, we moved to, there was just a better schools and blah, blah, blah. And it's just a better district, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm remembering, like, when I was about to move, I was, like, Google mapping how far it would be to walk to my favorite bar and shit. And I'm just like, oh, man, because I'm still in the same neighborhood. And I was just like, oh, yeah, the Sardines even closer to this.
That's so funny. Oh, my God.
It's different. It is different.
It is different.
But yeah.
Yeah, they look at schools first and foremost. True. Anyway, so I wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. And Ron, I think you're right. We've been headed towards this for a while. They were talking about, let's get rid of, instead of changing the minimum wage, let's bring back child labor. We're excluding part of the workforce that might want the freedom to work, like the way they frame things.
Oh, that is the worst freaking. And that is like, you look at the statistics, right to work is the most scammy, exploitative thing. You look at the statistics. All of the lowest wages are in right-to-work states. All of them.
You're
because
correct.
they exploit you. And by the way, I lived in a right-to-work state. I lived in Tennessee. I can tell you what it was like for people who had right-to-work jobs. They worked nonstop. They worked, 6.5 days a week.
Wow.
They had to take sick time to have any day off, and they couldn't do shit about anything, and they got no benefits.
It's awful.
It's nuts. And that happens in more parts of the country than we realize. I mean, I'm not sure off the top of my head the tally of right to work states, but I mean, I know Arkansas is one, Tennessee's one, because that's where I lived. I lived in Nashville, Alabama, and then you see child labor.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of them. And it's something that needs to be challenged by the unions. So let's shift gears for a second. And I want to talk about today is primary day in 2 states. Alaska, Wyoming are having the primaries as we speak. Let's touch on Alaska first, because I think there's something interesting happening in Alaska. Not Sarah Palin. That's not the interesting thing that's happening in Alaska. What's happening in Alaska today is they have ranked choice voting. So I'm not sure that a lot of people realize that. So, Colin, let's pull up the Tuesday is Alaska's first ranked choice election. Here's what you need to know. So ranked choice voting, I am a fan of ranked choice voting. We used ranked choice voting in San Francisco recently in the last election. That is how Chesa Boudin, who unfortunately has now been recalled, but that is how he was able to win his election. So folks that aren't familiar with ranked choice voting, it is definitely more democratic.
It's way better. I mean, it's one of the tools we need to really kind of break the duopoly, because where messaging is concerned, it eliminates the whole, don't vote for a spoiler. Well, now there is no spoiler. You can just put whoever you'd rather, you can just rank your choices. So, you can rank the candidate you like the best first.
That's right. So there's going to be rounds of voting. So let's look at this article, because I have a feeling a lot of folks aren't familiar with ranked choice. This is how they're doing it in Alaska. There's more than one method to this. So Tuesday is the date of the regular primary. That's today. And nearly every state and federal office is on the ballot. Voters will pick one candidate in each race that they'd like to see advanced to the November ballot. And you can see a sample ballot here. They're showing you a sample ballot. August 16th is also the date of the special U.S. House general election. Alaskans will choose through the state's first ranked choice vote who will serve in the U.S. House for the rest of the year. All right, so there are 2 separate sections on the ballot for the U.S. House of Representative candidates. There is a lengthy list of candidates on the front of the ballot, and then some of the same names are on a pared down list on the back. So those are the 2 sections, right? That's because this is 2 elections on the same piece of paper. The lengthy list on the front side of the ballot shows the candidates vying in the primary to serve in the next full term in the U.S. House. Pick one. On the flip side, there are 3 names. These are winners of the special primary we had in June. The winner will serve the remainder of the late Congressman Don Young's term. Is this a ranked choice election? Only for one race, the special general election for U.S. House. The candidates are Republicans Nick, I think it's Begich, Sarah Palin, and Democrat Mary Patola. You can choose one as your number 1 and then rank the other 2. All of the other races all other races are primaries. Voters can pick no more than one. So they're just doing it for the special election. So how do I know who the writing candidates are? Well, that's not what we're interested in. I think they have a sample of the ballot on here. I guess they don't. I thought they did. All right. Anyway, so why this is important that it's ranked choice. So we have Sarah Palin trying to make a comeback. For folks that don't know who Sarah Palin is,
she's great. She's such a brilliant mind. She could see Russia from
right. You can see Russia from her backyard. I don't even know where to begin with Sarah Palin, folks.
Well, first of all, doesn't she try to do a comeback every couple years or so? I feel like every couple years or so, she tries to do a comeback. It lasts for a few hours, and then she's just done again. She's like, I'm going to start a network, and everyone's like, oh boy. And then she's just like, never mind. Then she'll have some book, or she's doing something in office, and it's just like, okay, I guess I didn't realize she was still doing anything anywhere. I thought she was just sort of up in Alaska, hunting moose, whatever it is her and her family do.
From her backyard.
Staring at Russia, giving her kids weird names and stuff. I mean, whatever it is.
I'm not pulling up that video now that we're talking about it. So Sarah has just said so many dumb things. I just don't even know where to begin with Sarah. But she is on the ballot. She's running against Harriet. Oh, no. That's in the Cheney election. She's running against 2 other candidates. Mary Portola is the Democrat. Begich, I think I'm saying that correctly, is the other Republican. I think she might get thrown out on the first round because it is ranked choice voting, right? So it could be the case where Mary, Patola, and Begich get to the second round, and then probably Begich wins because it's a majority Republican state. It remains to be seen, but it does change the way things play out in an election. What are your thoughts on ranked choice?
Well, I think ranked choice. So, this particular election, it doesn't look like people have necessarily great choices, 2 Republicans and a Democrat. I don't know anything about the Democrat, but, I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're likely just a corporate Democrat because most of them are. So these choices aren't great. But I'll give another example of ranked choice voting where they used it in Maine. And there was a Senate race where Lisa Savage was an independent Green candidate. She was endorsed by the Greens, but due to like some weird bureaucratic stuff on the ballot, she was actually registered independent. It was kind of like a long headachy thing. So she technically wasn't a Green, but she was anyway. And she was in a ranked choice competition. Now, she was not victorious. Just because you have ranked choice, that doesn't mean the candidate you like the best is going to win. But what did happen was she was included in all the debates. She got some press time. She got to talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people were more open to her because they weren't like, well, I have to vote for the Democrat, otherwise the Republican wins or whatever. They were like, no, I get to make my choices. I want to hear this person out.
Right.
And because of that, all of the other candidates, I think the Democrat ended up winning, but regardless, all of the other candidates had to talk about issues like Medicare for all, like living wages, like the Green New Deal.
Yeah.
So it at the very least forces the conversation, and it's a much better process. And she did pretty well, especially considering with what she was up against. She was outspent by all the other major candidates, but herself and the Libertarian were given a fair shake, which, I don't agree with Libertarians on a whole lot, but I think they should get a fair shake too. And in ranked choice voting, all the other candidates, they get a fair shot. And that's the way it ought to be. It ought to be, people actually discussing ideas. You didn't see as much just flinging mud attack ads because they didn't have to, like, it wasn't like, oh, my only opponent is this Republican or this Democrat. It's like, no, they're all my opponents. And this is going to be a battle of ideas because people are going to have a more critical lens on because they know they can just rank the person they like the most. So if I spend all my time just attacking this one person, they're just gonna be like, okay, so you don't like this person, noted. What the hell are you gonna do though? This other person's talking about ideas. I think I'm gonna rank them first. I think I'm gonna rank you maybe second or third. So all you're doing is attacking this other jagoff. So I think that
it changes a lot. Yeah, it definitely changes a lot. I also think it's interesting in Alaska because you have such a large group of independent voters. It's I think it's according to, I wrote it down. According to the last Gallup poll, 58% are independent, 24% GOP, 13% Democrat. So the fact that you have 58% of the state that considers themselves, self-identifies as being independent, is part to that conversation. And I don't think that helps Sarah Palin. I mean, I could be wrong here. I think she has very negative favorability, and for good reason.
I mean, yeah, who knows what she's selling these days? I mean, she kind of strikes me as one of those also like political chameleons. They'll just try to latch onto whatever lane they can, whenever they can do it. I mean, you see that a lot. So I couldn't even tell you what she's selling these days.
That's why. But I think people do see that, Ron, and I don't think they like it. I think voters want more authentic choices in their candidates.
I think so too, but like you're always going to get new people when you do that. I mean, that's why you do it, right? You're trying to just find a lane where you can win elections. So you'll be like, I'm going to dip my toe here. I'm going to dip my toe here. I mean, she's always been on the right, that's for sure. But who knows?
Yeah, she's a Christian fascist. She's way on the right. I mean, she would love everything DeSantis is doing. There's no two ways about it. So she's an extremist. Always has.
Oh, definitely. But as far as what subgenre she's selling, I don't know where she's at there. Like that, I have no clue. So she could be appealing to, whatever subgroup. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, either way, it's like with ranked choice voting, you are forced to discuss ideas. They might be terrible ideas. You're not guaranteed they're going to be good ideas, but you're at least going to hear some ideas. And I don't know how much optimism one can have in a race with 2 Republicans and a Democrat. But, I mean, going again to the example in Maine where you had like a Green and a Libertarian on the ballot, they actually had to talk about ideas. And, that's better than what we got.
I agree. So I'd like to see more ranked choice voting put in place across the country. So it was interesting to see that Alaska is moving towards that. I give them props for that. We'd like to see that expand. So the other big election, obviously, is happening in Wyoming. Liz Cheney. Let's talk about Liz Cheney for a second. She's probably going to lose her seat. I don't think that that's a crazy statement at this point. And I sort of think Liz knows that. I don't think that's any big shock to her. Harriet Hageman, who is the person that Trump is backing in the race, who's out, she's like 30 points ahead of Liz Cheney at this point. She is very much 100% in that QAnon Trump camp. She's an extremist. There's no two ways about it. I think a lot of the state is angry at Liz Cheney, not only for not supporting the big lie that Trump won the election, but also for serving on the January 6th committee, right? So they see that as very problematic for any Republican. We've had, a whole series of folks that spoke out against January 6th, Republicans, and most of them have either decided not to run again or have lost their primary. I believe the two Californians are the only ones that made it through. At least one of them's from California. So, the odds are stacked against anyone that made this move because Trump is still beloved by the Republican base.
Trump is the GOP. Whenever they try to separate, and whenever people are trying to be apologists for the GOP, where it's just the Republican Party was hijacked by Trump. And it's like, no, it wasn't. He's just a reflection of them. He's the GOP minus subtlety. They're all on board for the same policies. He just lacks any subtlety. So he just is on the surface with how cruel it is. And man, I'm sorry. How crazy is it that there is a state in the United States, which I know is batshit crazy, but there is a state where Liz Cheney isn't conservative enough for you. She's not extreme enough for you. Liz Cheney is she's too moderate.
Hear me out on this one. Oh, no, I agree with you. Holy crap, because she's a neoconservative warmonger. We'll talk about that too. But I think there's something more interesting at play here. It has more to do, I think, with loyalty to the party, right? They see her as being a traitor, regardless of what her positions are. They see her as being a traitor because of what these choices that she's made. This isn't the party of Nixon, right? So if you go back and you look at the period of time where the Watergate scandal happened, there were Republicans, and plenty of them, that were very upset and angry about what Nixon did because they felt that the system, preserving the system, the integrity of the system was far more important than having any sort of party loyalty. But those days are gone. That sort of viewpoint just doesn't exist anymore.
And it's gone everywhere, by the way, too.
It's gone everywhere, yeah.
It's gone with the Democrats as well. It's not anywhere.
It's polarized. I do think Liz knows that. She's also has a war chest, $14 million in it. She hasn't spent it all. I do think that she's maybe given up this idea of having that state position and might be considering a run for president. I'd be curious what your thoughts are.
Wow. I mean,
why else would she be positioning herself on the January 6th committee? Listen, in Wyoming, the voters it's 4-to-1 ratio of Democrats to Republicans. So there's very few Democrats in the state. This is a very deep red state.
This is Dick Cheney's.
But I understand that. I agree with you. But understand that in a national perspective, the choices that she made, whether, you and I are going to say she's, supported some very neoconservative, horrible positions. Her father was a monster. All of that given aside, there are lots of people that look at what she did and respect it. I'm not saying I agree with that, but it is part of.
I don't agree with that. No, I know, and that just goes to again the just complete dissonance in this country, where you would somehow, she came to the conclusion that Trump's bad, which no shit, but you're gonna somehow excuse her war criminal family, which she embraces. And even entertain the idea of sending another Cheney to the White House. That is offensive beyond comprehension. I don't care what she said about January 6th. And when I see people being, it's the same. How is it any different than, it's just like a more mainstream version of the whole, well, Marjorie Taylor Greene said something about the FBI. That's great. That I'm going to retweet it because I'm so edgy. It's the same thing. Well, Liz Cheney said resistance.
Yeah, it's the same thing on the other side of the spectrum.
It's the same hyper tribal bullshit, and
right.
it is so ridiculous.
I agree, it's ridiculous. Oddly, though, the tribal bullshit that's being supportive of Cheney on the Democrat side, they like it because in their mind, this is somebody that is putting country over party. I'm not necessarily saying that's the case. I do think, in her mind, being a patriot is preserving the system that we have in place, right? And not allowing anybody, sort of like the old school Nixon period of time that I was referring to earlier. Hang on.
Oh, is your jet back?
The jet's back.
Tell your jet to wait. Where are you? I mean, I applaud you for avoiding LA traffic by flying a private
impossible. Jet. Yeah.
Must be nice.
He's going up the street now. But I do think, and I lost my train of thought, darn it.
You were talking about Liz Cheney and how you've already endorsed her letters in the mail.
No, I haven't endorsed her at all. I'm explaining all sides of the equation. I personally I would never vote for any sort of neoconservative. I think that goes without saying. But what I'm trying to etch out is where all of these various parties stand in this conversation. Because that's my job, Ron. I'm not a comedian.
I understand.
Anyway, it's interesting to look at this. So I wanted to point something out because to you as well. Colin, I sent to you a link with a bunch of Twitter search tweets, if we could put that up. I think the other problem with Cheney in the state isn't just the fact that they see her as a traitor for, saying that Trump didn't win the election, that was incorrect. And I don't think it's a problem with her supporting the January 6th committee hearings. I think there's another thing at play here, and that is that they see Liz Cheney as an elitist. She's part of the global elite. She's a wealthy individual. She's out of touch, right? Because of the state of the country right now, because of the way it's been since 2016 moving forward, what's happening on the left as far as being angry about elitism is also happening on the right, and it's happening in spades. So that's another problem. So let's read some of these tweets just so people can get sort of an idea of what I'm talking about here. And let me pull this up on my computer because I can't read that far away without my glasses. All right, so Liz Cheney, elitist. I just plugged that in here, and this is just a smattering of what these folks are saying. The Cheneys are and always have been elitist assholes. I despise political dynasties, and the Cheneys are emblematic of why we'd all be better off if we never had another Cheney in any political office. So, yeah, I'm not upset at all. Liz Cheney is her own worst enemy.
I actually agree with those words.
So,
like those words, I agree with 100%. But the perspective they're coming from, I might not agree with. But I agree with them. You just read that tweet to me.
As is often the case, Ron. So this is a point I always want to make to people. As is often the case, the right and the left can sometimes point at the same problem and diagnose it exactly the same. It's their solutions that are different, right? So everybody in the country that is suffering from income inequality knows that they are suffering from income inequality, and they understand the reasons why. They know that there is a corporate power at play that has control of Congress. The Congress is bought and paid for. They know it. They feel it. They haven't had an increase in wages in a long time. And instead of the left, meaning the Democratic Party, I'm using left really,
I understand.
Broad here. And the left hasn't really provided a left exit to the income inequality and the economic pain in the country. Instead, what did they do? They ran Hillary Clinton instead of Bernie Sanders. Hillary Clinton is part and parcel to the banking community and to the third way neoliberal policy that has been keeping folks in this position for so long. So again, the problem is in the solution. If the left, I think, had provided a Bernie Sanders sort of exit to the problem, we would be in a very different place today in the country. But
we'd be in the middle of his second term.
Right. All right.
We'd be in the middle of a second Bernie Sanders term. But I mean, there's plenty of reasons to criticize Bernie. He's not perfect, but holy shit, would we be better off if he was president?
Exactly.
I mean, there's these things called executive orders. Bernie would have done a lot by now. Biden didn't do any.
I agree. All right. So here's another one. Yes, she would fit in perfect on the blue side. So this is a guy saying that she'd fit in perfect on the blue side.
Oh, my God.
I know. DC elitist, disconnected from constituents, warmongering father, what more could you ask for? Warmongering father, this is true, but when did the right become unwarmongering? I mean, in their kind of populist world, they sort of see their non-intervention, meaning like their America First isolationism.
Well, Trump said he was a non-interventionist. He said he wanted to end and people actually connected with that. People like that message. I do think
absolutely do.
And I will say this, I think that is one of the things where it's like people have a lot of common ground. Most Americans, regardless of your political ideology, we're tired of these endless wars, and more people are making the connection that not only are these, endless wars morally repulsive beyond comprehension, and we're brutalizing people around the world for no reason other than the profits of a few rich assholes, but also it's the reason we have a declining quality of life at home.
Yeah.
Trump said all that. Well, not in those words, but Trump said he wanted to end the wars. People believed him. It was a bunch of baloney. He didn't end the wars. He kept it on autopilot the same way Obama did. And the autopilot that they kept on was the system that the Bush administration put in place. Liz Cheney's father, actually. They put the axis of evil, the neocon agenda, they put it in place. They had the list of countries.
They came for your amendment rights. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, they had the list of countries they were going to go after. Obama said he was going to shut that down. He didn't. Trump said he was going to shut that down. He didn't. Joe Biden didn't even say he was going to try to shut it down. He didn't even give you the lip service. So, is your jet back?
Yes.
Your jet's coming?
Jet's back.
Stop talking about war. Sorry. I'm a jet. I like that stuff.
No, I don't disagree with that. I mean, in many ways, the legacy of Bush is really terrible, much worse than some of the things that Trump did. And people have to remember Samuel Alito was a Bush appointee, not a Trump appointee.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, Trump's big thing was like, here, I could talk if you need to tell your jet to hold up.
I'm going down the street now.
Oh, he left?
Yeah, Tuesdays are trash day. I always tell people like it's hard for me to live stream on Tuesdays.
Oh, fun. Well, I mean, look, he keep in mind, Trump didn't start a war, but that's because he had a big pandemic thrown in his way. So it's like, I mean, giving him credit for that, it's kind of like giving him credit for well, emissions went down for a little bit. Well, that's because there was a lockdown in the country.
Right,
so,
exactly.
So yeah, I mean, it's
all right.
I think it is possible Liz Cheney could run as a Democrat. I do think that's possible, and I think because I think the DNC is that.
No, that's
I think it is that ridiculous. It is that ridiculous, and they always brag about how they're a wide tent. We're a big wide tent.
Yeah,
by the way, we're warriors for Roe v. Wade. Even though we ran an anti-abortion guy recently with Tim Kaine when he was the running mate of Hillary Clinton. And by the way, even while Roe v. Wade was getting gutted, Nancy Pelosi was supporting anti-abortion rights candidates throughout the country. Right. So they're a wide tent, except for leftists. They're not welcome. But otherwise, I mean, you could be a neocon because guess what? Joe Biden's a freaking neocon. You kidding? He is a neocon. Never saw a war he didn't like. Gave us the crime bill. He was a neocon.
It's free Marcus, the moral arbiter. I don't disagree with you.
Totally. Right. And so I can totally see Liz Cheney being made into some resistance hero and running as a freaking Democrat. And it will be so ridiculously stupid. And just imagine if it is Ron DeSantis versus Liz Cheney, the most dangerous person in government, versus the spawn of the former most dangerous person in government. Wow. Can't wait to get to the polls.
No, make it stop. Let's not even will that into being. I want to read a couple more of these
I'm the ghost of Christmas future. I'm here via Tina's personal jet to warn you all.
No, make it stop. All right. God, I guess he's coming back down the hill now. Sorry.
He's just trolling you.
Is it loud? It's super loud. The jet.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Whatever.
So here's another one. Wyoming is a very moral place, which is why the immorality of Liz Cheney is intolerable. Liz is a card-carrying member of the D.C. elitist party. Her and her father have spent a lifetime getting rich off of the government tit and will attack anyone trying to remove her lips from the nipple.
Very, very graphic there. Very, very graphic. That person was probably watching porn while they were tweeting that.
All right, maybe
Good for them for multitasking. That's impressive.
I think y'all get the point. The point being that these, they see Liz Cheney as part of, the globalist elite. Those are their words, not mine. And it's just sort of become part and parcel to what the right has turned into in the country. All right, so we'll see where that goes. My prediction, and I don't think it's totally crazy, is that that Liz Cheney loses her seat and that she considers a bid for president. So
you think she'll run as a Republican?
I do. I don't see her ever cross.
Probably will. I think she probably will. I wouldn't be shocked if she, because even her dad. I mean, did you see like she pulled her dad out of retirement to make a video for her, where he just. I feel like he should have been like, vote for my daughter or go fuck yourself. That's what he would have done if he had a sense of humor.
Yeah, but that's sort of fair in a way. Ron, my thought is this. Liz Cheney would occupy that lane held by these old school Republican business guys, right? These aren't guys that are necessarily into like the neo-fascism kind of QAnon stuff that Trump has enabled over the last 4 years, right? Not the alt-right. This is the old school business Republicans that were very much, in power under the Bush administration, right? So it's a different brand of Republican party. It just is. I don't think that that's enough to propel her to any sort of a win, and I'll tell you why. The base of the Republican Party, right, the solid base, they're going to vote for any Republican candidate no matter what. Even if they hate Trump, and they think he's a total piece of shit, they're still going to vote for Trump over the Democrat. These guys are not all of a sudden going to switch party and vote for whoever the Democrats put forward. That's just not the case. But however, like with what we're seeing on the left side, where people are breaking off and refusing to vote for the sitting Democrats, a lot of these Trump supporters are exactly the same way. They're not going to just vote for any Republican candidate per se. They might sit it out, or they might go to, the Libertarian. A lot of these guys are turning into ANCAPs now, which is like extreme right-wing libertarianism. I see that movement growing. So I think that does not bode well for her. So I don't know. I think that she might run. I do think that Trump has the best shot, even over DeSantis, as we talked with earlier. I guess this all remains to be seen. These things can change. Obviously, we have October surprises and all kinds of things that can happen between now and then during a season. But
I think Liz's 15 minutes are going to be very short. So I think by the time the 2024 primary is among us, it's going to be over. I mean, yes, right. I do. My point in bringing up the whole running as a I wasn't making a prediction with that. I don't think that's likely to happen. I'm just saying it could. I mean, I'm just saying I wouldn't put it past the DNC establishment to pull something like that. Because again, like politically, it's like she's not all that different. I mean, it's like when you look at, what's really in the Democratic establishment, it's just not. And that's why Republicans are able to go so lockstep in tow when it comes to voting. Well, it's because that's the platform they want, whereas the Democrats, they're making it out like there's some left-wing option. They're not left-wing at all. They're a right-wing party. They claim ownership of all the leftists in the country, and that's not theirs to claim. Right. I don't feel any sense of camaraderie with the Democratic Party. I'm not even registered as a Democrat anymore. I was at one point, because when I was 18, I lived in Pennsylvania, and I had to, if I wanted to vote in any primaries, I had to choose. So I'm like, well, obviously I'm not a Republican, and I wasn't even paying that much attention politically then anyway. So I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm a Democrat, whatever the hell that means. Turns out it means nothing. It means nothing. And, so now I live in California. I'm not even registered as a Democrat. So it's like, this idea that there's some left identity with the Democrats is absolute hogwash. And it's and they use that to be like, well, that's why we don't win. It's because, no, you don't win because, there's already a very clear right-wing option.
Exactly. That's the thing, Ron, and I think you might agree with me on this. If the Democratic Party actually got their crap together and decided to govern from a progressive viewpoint, like really fill that left space, I believe that they would be perpetually in power.
Well, fuck yeah.
But they don't. They don't seem to see it.
Post FDR, they dominated for how many freaking years? And that was just by giving a little bit. They represented the working class for a hot freaking minute, but the momentum carried for 40 freaking years.
Yeah.
Then they gutted it all. You know why? Because winning's not their first priority. If winning was their first priority, they'd still be winning nonstop.
That's right.
But it's not. The first priority is keeping the oligarchy happy. And if you can beat a Republican or two, great. If not, well, as long as the gravy train keeps rolling, we're fine. They've proven that time and time again. That's what. Why are there policies that are popular with over 80% of Americans that are still ignored by the political system? Well, because Republicans represent the rich who don't want it, and Democrats pretend to represent the working class, but they don't actually do that. That's why.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Let's give you your switch gears and give you your moment to talk about what's going on with the digital rights bill.
Speaking of policies people love, speaking of great policies that over 80% of the frickin' country wants, yet somehow we still aren't getting them, we go to the digital rights disco. You know, we talked about Amazon earlier, and a lot of you guys probably already know this. I've been on the show, Status Coup, promoting this before, and I've also talked about this on your show, Tina, and of course on my own show, Get Your News On with Ron. There are 2 antitrust bills floating around in Congress right now that would break up big tech. You can go to antitrustsummer.com to learn the details of these bills. I won't go through all the details now. But they are antitrust bills that would basically stop Amazon from prioritizing their own content from other content when you're searching for a product. It would stop app stores from having these near monopolies on how people can search for apps and what software works and doesn't work. It would be the most significant antitrust legislation we've seen in this country since the 1980s when they broke up AT&T. AT&T used to have a monopoly on our phone lines. Long-distance calling cost an arm and a leg and the blood of your firstborn. When that ended, long-distance calling became affordable. We got devices like the answering machine and the modem, which led to the World Wide Web as we know it today, partially at least. So antitrust legislation is important. It can happen even when not so great people are in power. Keep in mind, the last great antitrust legislation we had was when Reagan was in power. So you can still get stuff through when the public just demands it and when it's just abundantly necessary, which it is now. And this would help rein in big tech. Now, these bills have overwhelming bipartisan support. Everyone from Josh Hawley to Bernie Sanders wants to see these bills get through. Chuck Grassley and Amy Klobuchar collaborated on one of them. But Chuck Schumer's in charge of bringing it to a vote. Chuck Schumer's daughter.
Yeah.
Well, Chuck Schumer has 2 daughters. One of them works for Meta, which is Facebook. One of them works for Amazon, is a lobbyist for Amazon. Big tech really does not want to see these bills go through because it reins them in a little bit. They got to give up some of their power. So Chuck Schumer has been dragging his feet, claiming he doesn't think the votes are there. According to 2 Reuters reports, and Amy Klobuchar and Chuck Grassley, they're saying the votes are there. Chuck Grassley's like, look, I got the House in order here. There's enough Republicans behind this thing. We got the votes. Amy Klobuchar saying the same thing. 2 Reuters reports say the same thing. Chuck Schumer's like, well, I'm not sure. In reality, Chuck doesn't want to bring these bills to a vote because of his conflict of interests. But he's been getting so much pressure. The organization Fight for the Future, who I'm collaborating with, they put video billboards outside of both his residencies for weeks. Yeah. So he's feeling this pressure. According to a spokesperson for Chuck Schumer, he supports these bills himself, which, you know,
and
cool
why
story.
Is he bringing it to the floor?
Why isn't he bringing it to a vote? Well, he's claiming he's not sure the votes are there. They're insisting it is. The most recent was, now our big goal was to get this through before the August recess, because after the August recess, everyone's going to be in midterm mode. Unfortunately, we did not meet that goal. But they're saying they're going to vote on it in the fall. Chuck Schumer has said there's going to be a vote in the fall. Amy Klobuchar has verified that. So that's where we're at right now. We got to keep the pressure on, folks. If you have not yet, and I know a lot of you already have, and thank you so much for doing that, but please go to antitrustsummer.com and sign that petition. It takes about 40 seconds. It lets all of your constituents know we got to keep this pressure on. They are feeling the heat to sign this legislation. Keep in mind, these politicians, even though they love to serve the lobbyists, you know what else they want to do? They want to keep their frickin' jobs. So if we're loud enough and they know, hey, it would be a good look to sign historic antitrust legislation into law before the midterms, they're going to do it. They're going to say, hey, sorry, big tech, we got to give the people a win here. And they're going to frickin' do it. It's happened before. It can happen again. This is an attainable win. Let's get it. And you can help out, and it takes you less than a minute. Please, antitrustsummer.com. And also, there's another bill floating around. Colin, do you have the second link I sent about net neutrality? I'll give that a very, very quick mention. There is a bill out there to reinstate net neutrality. It is literally 2 pages long, because basically all it does is it designates the internet as a Title II classification, which means it's a utility in your life, kind of like flowing water. Clearly, the internet is a utility in our life. That's abundantly clear. So it should be designated as such. It was when we had net neutrality. When they gutted net neutrality, they redesignated it as an information service like TV or radio. It is clearly a utility in our day and age. So, you can go to fightforthefuture.org to learn more. Or Demand Progress is also pushing the net neutrality bill as well. And again, antitrustsummer.com. Please sign that petition, please, and thank you.
Whew. Thank you for that, Ron. I do think we need to bring net neutrality back. We have
Big time. Well, we have it in California. We're lucky. We got a state bill here in California.
Even though we have a state bill, we still have problems because these are national companies. I know I've had nothing but internet problems. Like I pay a lot of money for shit internet, even with the California protection.
Well, those are two different issues, Tina. See, that's why we need municipal broadband, which I am also a big advocate.
100% agree with you there.
And that's another bill that we got passed in California. We just haven't really built it out to fruition yet. So we do have net neutrality in California, which is a good thing. That means that ISPs can't prioritize traffic. We actually also have a big broadband bill that was signed into law in California, but the cities need to start capitalizing on it. So that's another big, long thing we definitely don't have time to get into now. But
no. All right. So I wanted to get to the super chats. Ron, you want to read the super chats?
Yeah, let's chat it up with everybody. Hi, y'all.
Hi, y'all. Can you see the super chats there in the StreamYard?
You want me to read?
Yes, because
a couple of them. You might have a plane at any point. We can't have that. We can't have your plane fucking up these super chats. Chris Hazlett, what's up? You're a member for 4 months. That's awesome. Fight the power. I am proud to support this outlet. Keep up the great reporting and cutting through the spin. Thank you very much, Chris. Good to hear from you, buddy. Yeah. We got humorous. Thank you for being humorous. That's humorous, and humorous says thanks. Thanks for being there, Ron and Tina. So thank you for that, humorous. Then we got Dave. What's up, Dave? Good to see you, buddy. Dave L. I didn't last long in Florida. The whole state gave me. This is a fun call out, man. I dig this comment. I didn't last long in Florida. The whole state gave me a creepy JG Ballard vibe. Cool reference, dude. I appreciate it. DeSantis sort of makes sense coming from Florida. Yeah, I feel that way about like Matt Gaetz too. Like I feel
God. He's the worst.
Matt Gaetz is like if like a used condom inside of a Taco Bell wrapper was a person, and it's just so appropriate for such a thing to come from Florida.
Okay, now I need to pour bleach over my brain. Thank you so much, Ron.
It is Florida. That was what I thought that was going to happen when he was in court. He's like, little do you know, I am Florida. That he was just going to turn into a Taco Bell wrapper and blow away to like a spring break in Daytona Beach and just flew through, litter and STDs, whatever it is he's going to do. And then go. Speaking of dangerous people in government.
Yeah, Matt is like he's facing some serious charges there. What's wild to me is how is that all of these QAnon people that use the term groomer or pedophile, right, to denote homophobic. It's a homophobic thing, right? They're saying it about gay folks.
Oh, it's incredibly homophobic. The way
he's actually facing charges that amount to that. And yet they seem to excuse him. I just can't wrap my brain around that.
Well, because they believe that was a big conspiracy against him, right? Like, isn't that what they think? It wasn't. He didn't do it. It was that they have some problem with him.
Right.
So.
Anyway, all right. Okay, we have a new one. $2 from Eugene. Love Romplicon on Status Coup News. Yes. Okay. So Eugene, you'll be happy to know.
Thank you so much, Eugene. Thank you, Eugene. My name is Ron Placone. Tina's known me for years, and somehow she didn't know that. Apparently, she called me Romplicon, but
it's rhyming. I'm getting my rhyme on.
You know what? I like it. I'm gonna go by that from now on. Romplicon. I sound like something you put on a salad. I'm happy.
You sound like a flavor of ice cream. You know, that's not the first time I've done that, though. I've done that like multiple times for some reason.
I do it all the time. I'm not. Yeah, you flub
it's my
words.
favorite ice cream. Anyway,
especially it's hot and we've been on for a while. But thank you very much, Eugene. Thank you very much.
And also, we should let folks know that you and I are going to be doing regular hosting coming up this fall on Status Coup. So you'll be seeing Ron and I on the regular. Also, on that note, I wanted to let folks know. So Thursday afternoon, we will be going full bore with our new show on covering right-wing extremism. It'll be some crazy stuff that we'll be going over, some funny stuff, because you have to have some funny stuff in there. I have a very special guest coming on Thursday. He has been the target of Andy No's, sort of attacks. I don't know how else you describe that. Andy had posted an edited video of him that wasn't entirely truthful or accurate. And he has been having issues with Andy No followers for months now. So we're going to have him on as a guest. I'm going to keep his name as a surprise for now. But it'll be a good show. So make sure you tune in Thursday afternoon for that. Ron's what's going on with your world? Anything, any shows you've got coming up?
Well, I'm looking forward to being here on Status Coup more often, and we're also going to be having a little bit of a digital rights disco on the show as well, where I'm going to be harping some of those issues along with the regular fare. So I'm happy to have that be part of the creative quilt. My cat's meowing. She's like, dude, time to get up and pay more attention to me. Also, I have a fun show coming up in Los Angeles on September 10th. I'm premiering a brand new show that I've been wanting to write for 10 years, and I finally got around to writing it. It's you might like this, Tina, knowing that we have similar academic backgrounds. It's a historical interpretation of the satirist Lucian, the ancient Syrian satirist Lucian. So I wrote a historical interpretation where I perform as him. I'm going to be doing it September 10th in the San Pedro neighborhood at a place called the Corner Store in Los Angeles. It's at 2 p.m. because it's like an outdoor thing, because I'm going to be doing it at Renaissance fairs in 2023.
Oh,
so I wanted to get used to doing it without amplification and outdoors and in daytime. So it'll be 2 p.m. at the Corner Store. There's a little outdoor patio. I'm going to be doing it there, and it's free. And I'm going to be taping it, send to Renaissance Fair. So if you're in the Los Angeles area or looking for an excuse to have a weekend by the beach in the Los Angeles area, come to this show September 10th. You can find more information on my website, romplacone.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at Romplacone, YouTube, Romplacone. If you like what I do and you want to make sure you catch all my beach walks and stuff on Twitter, please make sure you're subscribed. They always unsubscribe people to my channel. I know they do that here too. So please make sure you're subscribed. I know that they unsubscribe people. And if you're not subscribed already and you want to, please do subscribe. And socials, Romplacone, YouTube, Romplacone, Twitter, Romplacone, Romplacone.com.
No, it's Romplacon.
Romplacon. Just don't forget the E at the end.
All right, y'all. Thanks for tuning in to the show today. I hope you got informed and learned a little bit of stuff and also had a good laugh with us. And we'll see you tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Not me per se, but I think we have a new person coming in tomorrow. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, peace out.